ARDA, the American Resort Development Association. And at the American Resort Development Association, this is what's called the Next Generation Study. Now, this was commissioned in 2015 by the who's who in the resort industry. You can imagine Wyndham, Diamond, Blue Green, Westgate. All of them had something to do with it. Hilton, Marriott. And what this was really finding out in the samples that it had was who's buying this, how do we market to them, what's the next generation, and what they found was inflation was no longer driving cost in the industry. As a matter of fact, inflation has stayed pretty steady around 5%. It's only been below 5% at 4.5, 4 to 3. It's even been as low as 3% over the last 40 years, which based on what we know about inflation, if you're around 5%, that means prices double about every 20 years. Well, based on the prices of where resorts were 40 and 50 years ago, or hotels, and where they are now, they're way out of whack with inflation. Based on inflation, these properties should be around $40, $45 a night, which in actuality is about where they're at. But that's not what the market's saying. Now, the market's saying we're willing to spend $500, $600 a night, and I'll show you why. Taxes, if anything, taxes typically discourage people. Taxes right now are around 19 to 25%, depending on where you go. I know in Nashville it's just under 20%. And that would typically discourage people, but it's not slowing the industry down at all. As a matter of fact, the industry's exploding. These resorts are gaining momentum. Their sales are going up by 30% annually. As an example, one of the largest resorts here in Gatlinburg did $105 million in 2018. In 2019, they're looking to $136 million. That's their forecasted sales. So the market is exploding. So it must be supply and demand. Supply and demand must be dictating why these properties are so expensive. Well, that's not the case at all. Actually, if you look at both national and international occupancy, it hovers right around 60%. It's actually lower in the U.S. than it is overseas. Right here in the U.S., it is about, I'd say 60, 62%. Now, that's from a whole standpoint. If you actually go in and look at the SEC filings from some of these organizations, their actual occupancy hovers around 40%, 42%. And, so that has no reasoning as to why their occupancies are only selling 40% of their product. There's only a 5% inflation. There's a 19% tax on it, but their product prices have gone up dramatically, 500-600%, to where they're selling these rooms at $500 and $600 a night, and I'll tell you why. Now, if you look at this Next Generation Study, the picture here, a picture says 1,000 words. This is the market segment that they're targeting, and I'm going to show you basically a quick summary of what this says. Now, I know the demographics of who their real target market is, but overall, this is it. Now, what they said is millennials are the next large big target market. There's 80 million adults, and they have a buying power of over $200 billion. Now, what they found was millennials were more likely to buy a nice car than a house. And what was important to these people wasn't raising a family in traditional America, but actually being seen posting pictures of themselves in exotic places with exotic people. Now, what was disturbing to me, out of that 80 million people, 8 out of 10 millennial owners have a very positive perception of timeshare. In all actuality, 62% would be willing to buy it twice. So those numbers are staggering. You're talking 64 million people willing to pay $20,000 basically and mortgage their future vacation. And I'll tell you why. What they found were these people had certain characteristic types that were perfect for timeshare salespeople. They were emotionally charged, they were financially naive, they were very spontaneous, and they were entitled. So it was the perfect storm. When these folks walk into these sales centers, it's its own, let's say, for the sales reps. And actually, they can really tell just by looking who's walking in. If they're married, if they have a family, if they have a college degree, they've got this thing down to where they know exactly who their target market is. And that's typically a 35 to 18-year-old married with a college degree. And then they can break it down by racial ethnicity. They can break it down by marital status, by educational status. But for the most part, that is their target market, and they are running away with it right now.